What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Ivan Review. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's a pretty special episode, pretty special review. As you can tell by the title, it's going to be a review on the Joker. And I want to start off by just kind of admitting to you guys, I grew up on DC Comics. I would read them all the time, and Joker obviously being one of the most iconic villains in the history of comic books. This movie was a lot for me. And just experience-wise, and it kind of gave me some nostalgia. I'm going to start by giving off my score. And then I'm going to go over some stuff about the pros and cons of the movie. And there's not many cons. I'm just going to say that flat out. So yeah, this movie is the only other movie to get a 10 out of 10 this year for me so far. The other one being Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Completely stark difference in movies. And I kind of mentioned that in my Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood review. But this movie is absolutely incredible. Now, if you've seen Taxi Driver, it's basically Taxi Driver. They just copied it and made it, a DC movie. Obviously, there's some differences, but for me personally, I've seen Taxi Driver and it was very similar. Good thing is, though, I thought Taxi Driver was a good movie, and so it wasn't a bad thing that they kind of did that. Now, the movies are, and it's a hard R, and there's some controversy as to whether or not that was necessary. For me personally, I think it was. The movie wouldn't have been able to express the message that this movie does without being rated R. Any parents watching this review, it's a hard R. There's a lot of language, a lot of violence, a lot of dark themes. Don't take your kids to see it. However, this movie does provide an amazing lesson to society as a whole about the way that we treat people. You had a beautiful day in the neighborhood and kind of told us, it told us that we need to love each other and treat each other with respect. This movie shows us what happens when we don't show the people who struggle that type of love. Or if people need us in their lives and we're not there for them, how dark of a place those people go into. I'm not saying if you mistreat someone, they're going to become the Joker. Okay. But suicide rates, they're high. People feel alone more than they really ever have. And this movie touches on that. And it's a hard movie to watch. I sat in the theater and I was physically uncomfortable. I kept shifting in my seat. I've seen the movie twice. And the first time I watched it, there were people that walked out of the theater. So it's a rough watch. But for me, it was worth it. I felt like it did a really good job of telling the story I wanted to. Now, from the perspective of a DC Comics fan, Joaquin Phoenix, I think this is pretty obvious, will definitely be recommended for an Oscar or nominated for an Oscar award for this movie. He does an incredible job. I don't compare him to Heath Ledger because they're completely different Jokers. However, I prefer this over Heath Ledger's. It's kind of a different take on it. I think Heath Ledger was very iconic and his performance will never be matched, but neither will this one. Joaquin Phoenix does an amazing job. I prefer the more real mental health side to this Joker. They just did a really good job telling that story, and I really appreciated it. Cons to the movie, not many. I can honestly say that maybe some of the language could have been taken out, but even then, the language is part of New York. That's kind of a big city thing. I'm not trying to justify it, but it was not out of place here. I'm just not a big fan of language, so that's just me. But overall, incredible movie. If you are a DC Comics fan and you want to experience, I feel like this really just took me into DC Comics, like an actual comic book. I felt like I was in the book. And it was a feeling that I haven't really felt before. And DC really did it here. I mean, the Warner Brothers and DC came out with this when it was first announced they were doing this. It came out with some, hesitance. They didn't really, you know, like people were like, oh, no one really asking for a Joker movie. This is already breaking records. People are loving this movie, and I do too, as I've said before. So if you're okay with the language, if you're okay with the dark themes, definite recommend this movie. This is in my top. This is my favorite movie of the year. This is number one. And Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood's a close second. They're both 10 out of 10. They're completely stark different movies. I don't know. Joaquin Phoenix, you forget that you're watching him. This is the Joker that you're watching. And he went through a body transformation for this movie. He lost a lot of weight. He says it's only 15 pounds. I honestly think it was more, because you can see his ribs. You can see how sunken his eyes are. And I honestly just wish I could sit down and have lunch with him, because he seems like a really, really intriguing and genuine person. But yeah, guys, so that's kind of my raw review of Joker. If you do go see it after this, it's harsh. If you're not, if you're easy to get disturbed, it's a pretty rough watch. I would say that if you were watching Heath Ledger's Joker and you loved how dark Heath Ledger was, you'd enjoy this movie. I really do think that you'd enjoy it. So, all right, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a good rest of your day. And remember that if you're feeling alone, there's always people that you can reach out to. If you're having a rough day, feel free to comment down below. I'll make sure that I respond and try to help you out. So have a good rest of your day, you guys. Thank you so much. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video. Bye-bye.